Thanks everyone for joining. We'll get started in just a second as we filter everyone in as well. So looking forward to getting started today. All right, Annie, the number seems to be leveling out, so we can probably go get started and people can just filter in as they want to.
Okay, good morning and welcome everybody. I'm so glad you were able to join us this morning for our April Zoomed In on Real Estate. We have a great panel that will be discussing the timely April 2021 topics. And as you are coming in, I see there are just a couple more people have come in. So I think we can actually get started on the content of our meeting, Ryan. So welcome aboard everybody, and I hope you enjoy this morning's program.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to run through some normal updates first before we get into our speakers and everything. We got some great guests to talk to us today and to have a kind of a conversation around some of the stuff going on in the industry nationally as well. And so, but as always, I'm going to share my screen and hopefully you're seeing the right presentation. Is that correct? Can someone confirm that for me? All right, great. All right, so welcome to Zoomed In on Real Estate, and we always want to thank the Cooperative Bank Cape Cod, who's our partner and sponsor for the year on Zoomed In on Real Estate, and hopefully we'll have Charlotte back in May to talk about mortgage industry and what's going on there, as I know there is some shakeups with some of the new guidelines Fannie Mae has out there. And so I know it's impacted some transactions, so we can get some insight on that. Once again, I want to promote, especially because of our new requirement for 2021, the Cape Cod Real Estate Specialist designation for you to work on. That's brought to you by the Cape Cod 5. It's a set of classes aimed to provide the basic knowledge of real estate and how MLS works, and then also some local things going on in the Cape on increasing your expertise and how to distinguish yourself as a Cape Cod real estate specialist. New for 2021, to get this, you must have taken Fairhaven, which we'll talk a little bit more about later today, but it's a interactive online training around fair housing that the National Association of Realtors put out. And it's really not just around fair housing, but it gets into really the conversation around implicit bias, which we'll talk a lot about today as well. And so we really encourage you to take Fairhaven, but also know that it's a part of the real estate specialist designation as well, as an encouragement to take that. So we cannot be more happy to have that as part of our requirements for that this year. Coming up, here's our CE schedule for the month of April. April is Fair Housing Month, which is why the conversation is today on fair housing and diversity, equity, inclusion. And so some of the things we have coming up relate to fair housing. This Wednesday, tomorrow, we have a new class that we just wrote. That the second time we wrote it, ran it, but we wrote it to get approval. We got approval from the Massachusetts Board of Registration for CE, and really great class, protecting the protected classes in real estate. It really dives deeper into what are protected classes, how they are to be handled in real estate, because there's a lot of misinformation and confusion around around the protected classes, and also gets into the implicit bias concept. And so that is a new course we wrote locally to get approved for the whole state in CE requirements. So please take it if you have not signed up for it. The feedback from the first session we ran of it in February was great. Next Wednesday, we have a class that is not fair housing related, but one that you guys continue to say y'all need, is Selling the Sun, all about how you sell and market and establishing value of solar homes, of homes with solar power. So as with this conversation around environmental concerns continues. We're seeing solar more and more. And as always, you guys say there's a lot of nuances around it and you need to know it. So sign up for that CE class. As when we had a broker attorney roundtable recently, one of the things the attorneys brought up were all the issues around solar. So make sure you're well educated, whether you're representing a buyer or seller or client around selling the sun. And then April 28th, Wednesday, it is a fair housing CE class. And we're really working hard to bring in great instructors who teach it not in the normal way that you may have taught. But fair housing is an important subject, especially in Fair Housing Month, especially in the last 2 or 3 years in real estate, nationally, and also in the last year of this country is a conversation on fair housing. Also, May 5th, another popular class we have is another one we actually wrote to get approval for CE was short-term residential vacation rentals. So if you want to manage or are managing short-term vacation rentals, it's a great class to understand all the disclosure issues and how it applies to short-term rentals and everything around the Massachusetts short-term rental law and everything else in there. So it's a great class to take. And then May 11th at night, I believe this is several classes. You can go into the class detail to get the details of it, but we are partnering with other associations around the state to offer the Right Start. It's a nationally recognized designation that was created by Adorna Carroll. And so Adorna and her team, including Kimberly Allard, will be teaching the Right Start. And it's really geared to getting members in the first 3 years of the business off to the right start, but it's also just a great reboot for maybe people not doing as much business as they want on how to reboot your real estate career as well. And so we really encourage you to promote that out to agents. It's actually at night to help those newer agents into the business as well. So it's 5 to 8, I believe, at night over 3 sessions. It includes CE credits. And it is a $299 cost, but from the programming looks really great. And it's kind of this new session. So we encourage you guys to encourage people to take it that want to. You can contact Whitney and our staff for more information on that class. And then on May 12th, we have environmental issues as our CE class. So we'll be at least virtual for CE through the end of the summer. So if you do have a renewal date before the end of September, I would encourage you to start taking CE online if you have it, and reach out to Whitney for that as well. If you're waiting to take it in person, you're not going to be able to get your 12 hours in person this year. Very close to not being able to do it at all this year with what we have scheduled through September through the end of the year to get full 12 hours. So really start that planning now, talking to Whitney about the classes you can take virtually. We've also launched that Realtors for Clean Water series. We've had some really good webinars. We started out last November with the next generation of septic systems with the Barnstable Clean Water Coalition. We've had the Barnstable County Septic Loan Program, which not only is for septic loans, but also for sewer connection hookups, which those of you that have been on our last 2 webinars with Barnstable Sewer Assessment Bylaw from the town of Barnstable and the Mashpee Sewer Plans, which are both write-ups, will be on our website. Barnstable is now, Mashpee will be by probably the end of the day, early today, tomorrow. So it's really important information that once they pass their things to be disclosing to potential buyers in these areas. So you'll want to know what's going on there. And we'll talk more about that coming up. But tomorrow, for those that want an update on and work in the Dennis, Harwich, Yarmouth area, we have a overview of the proposed Dennis, Harwich, Yarmouth sewer plans and how that would work, and the latest updates around that. So please register for that webinar as well. We have MLS trainings coming up. Obviously, our quick dips every week. Thursdays is how to utilize RPR for searches and reports. And if you're a member of multiple MLSs or anything like that, RPR can be really powerful. So please take a look. And Don, it's just really powerful tool anyways with the revamp and redesign of RPR. You should really take time to look at that quick dips. Also, next Tuesday, we have a quick tips about the coming soon status. So if you've been wanting to use it or are using it, making sure what you're doing is all compliant with the coming soon rules around that. Take a look at the quick tip next Tuesday. And then the following Tuesday, how to get that compliance email out of your inbox. No one likes hearing from Mary Allen. And so that's the way to stop having her email you by looking at the things that you're doing that are getting those nasty grams from Mary Allen that we need to do all to make sure our rules are compliant, our data is compliant. So a quick market update for you guys as we get through this. We have had, as you guys know, continued crazy real estate. So the March stats just came out, and this was for the month of March. Our closed sales were down 13%. Our median sales price is up at $653,500. We even stopped saying it's new records because it literally is so high, the median sales price, that we can't even chart it anymore, right? It's up 48.5% in the last year. And I just want to caution people, because everyone looks at median sales price and thinks that is the price a home has increased in the last year 48.5%. And you might find some of that. However, what a median sales price really reflects is what the median house that sold that month is. So the median house that sold in the month of March 2021 may be a completely different house than what sold in March of 2020. So while it is somewhat looking at somewhat tracking what maybe prices are doing, but for example, the median sales of a house in March 2021 may have been a 4-bedroom, 3-bath colonial in Harwich, right? And I'm just making this up off the top of my head. While the median sales price in March of 2020 may have been a 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch in Barnstable, right? So you can't compare necessarily that being the same house. So too many people look at that and say, well, home prices have increased 48% in the last year. Not necessarily true. As we all know, real estate's local. And really, as you guys being the professionals in the field can kind of detail what an individual house price has gone up. It's also a reflection of what's on the market. If more expensive homes come on the market, you're going to probably see median sales price and close, right? More expensive homes, bigger homes close as well. Maybe people with second homes are more willing to sell now than primary residences and all that sort of stuff. So a lot of factors into that. But homes for sale, I mean, this is really what's driving the increase in prices at this point, right? Is that we have nothing for sale. We don't produce any new housing. Simply until we provide more housing on the market, either through new construction or resales, we can't get out of what we're in. And so we're seeing 78% decline in homes for sale from last March to this March. And last March, that was even interesting that was a lot of people pulling their house on the market, off the market by the end of last March. So really going to be interesting comparing year over year in inventory in April and May when not a lot of homes were coming on the market. And, halfway through March, we saw that decline in new listings last year, but we still couldn't even hit that new listings mark here. So while it might feel like a lot's coming on, it's still lower than normal as new listings are down 18% year over year on that in March. So when you look at first quarter, we have seen more sales in the end of first quarter, but March was down, however, and we do anticipate with this lack of inventory and this lack of new listings coming on that we will start seeing a decline in sales month over month. Maybe not in necessarily when you get to June and July. That's going to be interesting because of the issues that March and April had with inventory. So we'll see how this all plays out with that, right? From the stay-at-home order last year as we looked at it. Obviously it relates to the lack of inventory as we are seeing the effects in sales. But, I keep hearing people saying, well, people are selling stuff off market. Well, that would hurt the sales and that would also hurt inventory levels. So how much of what you're doing off market is going to end up affecting things in the future when you're just putting deals together, that kind of thing. So one interesting note I would say is 43% of the sales in March went for above list price. And that's compared to generally about 10% on average, generally in a marketplace. So with last March 2020, we saw 11% go above list price. March 2019, we saw 9.5% go for above list price. So we're seeing almost 1 in 2 sales is going for above list price in March. And I know many of you probably think that's actually low, but so we'll see how that goes moving forward, if that goes up even higher than that. So that's really our market update there. Want to bring in a couple people to have a conversation around some of the diversity, equity, inclusion stuff, not only in real estate, but on Cape Cod. And we'll be joined in a little bit. She's making the meeting in a few minutes, the NAR Diversity Committee Chairman, Michelle Walker. But we'll start off by first talking about an event we have coming up, and I'm going to bring in Jeffrey Klontz and Sonny Fellman, if you guys can unmute, and I'll bring you guys in. Jeffrey and Sonny are the chair and vice chair of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee at the local level, as we figure out how to promote fair housing in real estate. And we're going to talk a little bit about the issues in a few minutes in that, but wanted to have them. They've kind of putting together this event on April 27th for Fair Housing Month, and wanted them to be able to talk a little about this event and what's going on there before we dive into the other stuff. So Sonny and Jeff, you guys want to talk about this Connect the Respect event and series?
Terrific. Hi, everybody. It is a great honor for myself and for Sonny to be chair and vice chair of this committee. I'm not sure that everyone understands what the committee is. And so I thought I'd start by just giving you our mission statement. And the purpose of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee is to increase awareness of fair housing issues, encourage diversity, and eliminate intolerance and bias among real estate practitioners and the public, teach real estate practitioners how to operate an inclusive real estate practice, and to help grow diverse leadership within the MLS. So that's our mission, pretty broad, big mission. And one of the elements of that mission is to start a dialogue amongst our membership about what diversity and inclusion means and is. And some of these are difficult conversations to have because we all come from different ideas. There are no wrong conversations, but they're conversations that have to be had so that we all become on the same page. To some degree, the Cape does not have the same kind of diverse population as other parts of the country. We are a predominantly white place. We are a predominantly older place, but that doesn't mean that discrimination doesn't exist. And there are ways to run your real estate business to avoid those issues and to give equal service to everybody who comes into the office. Now, that's one of our missions along the way to talk about in a separate instance. But in this case, I'm going to turn it over to Sonny because Sonny is heading up our effort to have these uncomfortable conversations so that we can all move forward. So Sonny, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jeff. So first, I just want to give some praise to the association staff for really taking, these issues and really taking action on them. You know, we see people creating committees about diversity and inclusion, and I know that I've, sometimes rolled my eyes at it, like, okay, here's another committee, but there's no action that will happen without people who care about the issue. And we have a group of really wonderful people, including the staff, Jeffrey, and our entire committee who care and really want to make an impact. So just first a shout out to everybody involved and anybody who's interested in being involved, please reach out. We'd love to have more people. So through our discussions with our committee, we really we figured out quickly that a lot of these topics can be really uncomfortable to talk about, and it can be really uncomfortable to even look at ourselves, you know, and look at ways that maybe we could make changes within ourselves and then say that out loud. So we had the idea to create a safe space where we can come together and basically be open and honest about what we're seeing, about what we're thinking, and what people are experiencing, both in life and in the real estate market right now. So taking a hard look at ourselves and talking about it without judgment or shame or guilt. And the idea is to have these uncomfortable conversations in an effort to make it more comfortable for people to talk about it and to inspire more conversation amongst realtors throughout the Cape. So our first discussion is for Connect with Respect. We're going to try to make it, I think we decided on a quarterly event at this point. So our first focus is going to be on the Fairhaven simulation, which Ryan touched on. It's essentially a virtual simulation that NAR put together. And if you haven't tried it yet, I would definitely take the time to go through it. For our first event, we are asking people to go ahead and do the simulation. The first time I did it, I went through and answered as I felt I should answer. But in an effort, Whitney had a great idea, an effort to create more conversation for our event. I then went through, and I think some other people did too, and answered questions incorrectly. And that really brought up more topics to think about. But the idea is, you know, we really want to create and raise awareness on fair housing compliance. And Fairhaven did that for me, but it also really heightened my awareness of, you know, the struggles of people different from me who I may be, you know, working with or, you know, across the table from in transactions. And it actually puts you in different roles within the transaction. You know, in some roles, some scenarios, you're actually the buyer, which really helps to shift, you know, your thinking. Things that I don't often think about that you came up, you know, gender identities, language barriers, disability access, pairing a client with a certain realtor because maybe they share the same protected class, you know, thinking we're doing the right thing, LGBTQ partners. And then there was a lot of scenarios about steering people into a certain area that we think they'll like, you know, based on their ethnicity or race. So I think a lot of important topics will come up as you go through Fairhaven. I think, you know, the main thing is we really want to initiate conversations amongst ourselves so that we are all more comfortable going out and talking to our sellers and about these conversations. You know, love letters are a huge issue. I think Brian will talk about later. But these are conversations we have to learn how to have amongst ourselves and with our clients. So we would love to have you guys come to the event. It is on the 27th. So I hope to see all of you there. And you know, you don't have to come and speak. If you just want to come and listen, that's okay. We just want people to start thinking about it. And then once you start thinking about it, hopefully, you know, you start talking about it and we can all learn from each other.
All right, great, Sunny. Thank you very much. And so one thing is, as we get started with this conversation, we wanted to kind of do two parts. One, talk about the real estate side, but also talk about what's happening on Cape Cod, right? So from the real estate side, we were talking about fair housing issues and diversity and equity inclusion issues for several years now. And it really started out almost 2.5 years ago now with a big Newsday investigation report on Long Island around fair housing issues in real estate. And I'm going to play in a few minutes later on, say some of the videos around Newsday to talk about that. But then I guess that, you know, between that and then Suffolk Law did a big study in the Boston rental market as well that made national news around fair housing issues. And basically, in both instances, we saw real estate professionals' failure to abide by fair housing law in both instances on a pretty wide scale. And then, as Sunny talked about with disability issues, familiar status, all these things we've seen for years be real kind of problems in real estate. But then I guess nationally, the conversation around with George Floyd and some of the other things that happened last summer, nationally, the conversation got around that. And so real estate, once again, is having to think about that. On the Cape, we can kind of sometimes, I feel like, be isolated from some of that as well. But I wanted to bring in, did want to highlight things going on the Cape and some of the conversations on the Cape in the issue of racism and systemic racism that are going on, and some of the movements around it before we got into the real estate stuff. So we have Tara Wallace, Vargas Wallace, with us today. She has kind of started an organization on the Cape, and really unique and really great conversation. So Tara, you want to talk to us about what you're doing to kind of promote and tackle this issue, and then we can get into some of the things you see from where you sit, because you're highly involved also in the housing aspect on the Cape as well. So you want to talk about what you're doing right now on the Cape?
Sure. Thank you, Ryan. And thank you everyone for having me. It's definitely been enlightening to hear about the things that you all have been working towards and discussing. And it's refreshing to know that this is an issue that a lot of you carry in your heart. So thank you for caring and the work that you do in regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And yeah, so Amplify POC is a racial justice initiative to promote and advocate for businesses of color here on the Cape. And our mission is to reduce the racial wealth gap. And so, you know, there was a study done a few years ago called The Color of Wealth. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it was done by the Federal Reserve Bank. And it was found that the median income for a white household was $247,500. And the median net income for a Black household was $8. So that large, humongous, gigantuan gap in income, you know, wealth equity is what's known as the racial wealth gap. And so that is really what has been our mission to help reduce and advocate for, both on a local level and on a state level. And we do that in so many different ways. You know, what we've really been doing is amplifying local businesses. And Sunny is a part of our board. She's a member of our board, and she has been very instrumental in helping us do this as a team. And we do this, you know, we promote local POC-owned businesses on our social media. We have comprised a designated list where people can go to on our website, one space, you know, one area where they can go to and find these businesses and locate these businesses so that they can make intentional and mindful decisions on where to shop and who to do business with. And so that's one way that we do that. We also advocate on a like I said, a state level. Recently, we've been you know, in collaboration with BECMA, really advocating for state contracts and making sure that there's some equity in the way state contracts are dealt with. And let's see what else we have. Several different new initiatives coming up that I think are too much in their infancy to speak on, but we'd like to eventually see. You know, we know that the number one way to reduce the wealth gap is homeownership. And so that is something that we are going to be working towards, helping to increase homeownership within our POC community on the Cape, POC being people of color. And also to help with funds for capital for aspiring entrepreneurs. There's a large, as you've mentioned, Jeffrey, the Cape is mainly white, old folks. And that is very true. However, what's also true is that there are large communities of color here on the Cape. And I think, and oftentimes people of color do not fill out the census. So I feel like the census is largely misrepresenting the actual reality of people of color here. However, we are still outnumbered. So I do want to make that clear. And so, just making sure that we're amplifying not just businesses, but organizations and efforts that are going on in the community to help whatever's creating a positive impact. Whether it's like, for instance, Barnstable Allies, they're a wonderful organization. They're out there and they're really promoting and educating people and trying to create some sort of inclusion within the community. And we want to help amplify their efforts. So even though they're not a business per se, we are also amplifying those who are making impactful changes in the community. And I feel like I've gone on too long.
Terry, you've also been kind of involved in the housing sphere as well on this issue as well. Where do you see as areas the Cape can kind of improve in general, and where are the opportunities for the Cape and overall in this whole arena?
Yeah. So, this one's a tricky one, and mostly because most of the people that I know are renters. And not everyone is, but most of the people I know are renters, and they can't afford to buy a home. And then Housing Assistance is a great organization. I know that Ryan, I know I've seen you at some of their events. They have really done a great job in really trying to advocate and promote more available housing on the Cape. And it's really hard, especially with the antiquated zoning laws. And, there's just so many barriers that are in place, but they continue to push on. And in terms of home ownership, I think what's really, really important is to make sure that you're instilling and implementing practices that are equitable for all and inclusive to all. For instance, and I don't know if this is necessarily your organization's responsibility, but access to funds, may not be. Access to funds is really not the issue. It's more of distribution, right? And just making sure that these the loans are equitable and there's non-discriminatory loans, that people have more access to these loans and who's getting these loans, right? So I think that's huge, and just making sure that again, diversity, equity, and inclusion is being really being held accountable for your policies and practices that you have in place. Accountability is huge, making sure that not only that you're implementing these policies and practices, but that you're also acting on them. And when they're not being acted on, holding whoever is accountable, and making sure that they're actually making impactful differences and changes in the way that things are being done to include everyone.
Jeff and Sonny, anything to chime in with? Jeff, you're on mute.
I follow Amplified POC, and I think it is a fantastic asset to our community. It allows those of us who live a more sheltered life to see who's out there, this week, there was a gentleman who has a video production company. And wow, isn't that applicable to what we do? And he's a very talented man. He's set up a very good business. So why wouldn't I use him as a resource in my real estate business? And Tara is bringing that to my desktop, which I think is a phenomenal contribution to the community, for visibility, and her energy, etc., is just a real value. And it's great for us to be able to tie in to what she's doing. Sunny's already involved, and to help us with our efforts to be inclusive in our business for affordable housing, which we all know as realtors is a big problem here. And I'm really excited about the future of our work together to continue to bring this issue to the forefront.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Type in for a minute. I love that, Jeff. What we kind of talked about yesterday, Jeffrey, you hit on was, perception and humanity. And I think that it's so easy on the Cape for us to really not see what we don't see. We live in our town, and I mean, I grew up in Chatham, and going to Hyannis was like a day trip. It was like, oh, I got to go to Hyannis. And we're very sheltered. We live a very sheltered life on the Cape, and then within our own towns very often. And I think part of what Amplify does is it allows us to see beyond that, and to see the people in the neighborhood next door or the town next door that we, our children are in school with, and, they're around us, but we just aren't always seeing them. And like Jeff said, there's so many amazing businesses. My eyes have been opened. I thought I was somewhat immersed. My husband's Jamaican, and I'm like, oh, I am amazed at how many wonderful businesses and people and services there are for us to utilize. So, next time you're going to go out to dinner, or you're going to, go whatever your services that you're looking for, go to amplifypoccape.com and say, maybe there's somebody there I can check out and, support. So thanks for being here, Tara.
Thank you for that, Sunny and Jeffrey. I just want to add, we are still adding businesses to our website as well. So we're actively seeking them out. We are being very sensitive to the fact that, a business has to identify as a business of color. You might think that they may be a person of color, but they might not identify that way. So we're being very careful in our approach and making sure that they identify as a business of color. And I just want to say, in terms of the different businesses and the stories, it has been so rewarding reaching out and connecting with these businesses and finding out, what inspired them to start their businesses, and what trials and tribulations they've faced, and how they've been able to succeed. And so there's the entrepreneurial spirit amongst the POC community is alive and thriving. We just have to make sure that they stay sustainable. And in order for us to thrive as a whole community, it's important that we include our BIPOC sisters and brothers. So thank you for that.
All right, great. Thank you, Tara, and encourage you to stay on as we move on to talk about some of the other things going on as well. So one we're joined now by Michelle Walker, who's the NAR Diversity Committee Chair. And so Michelle, thank you so much for taking part. I hope your connection is good enough. Can you hear us?
For me, unfortunately. So I might try to hear me.
Yes.
I'm going to try and turn off.
All right, your connection's a little bad, so I hope maybe she'll get back to us.
You guys hear me?
We can't hear you now. You there? All right, well, maybe if you can call in or something, we can get better connection there. I did want to start talking about the real estate issue because, as I said before, we were talking about this in real estate base well before last summer, 2.5 years ago, with this Newsday investigation. I want to play a video from the Newsday investigation so you guys kind of see some of the things that came out of the Newsday investigation. And Marissa's going to share all the videos and the links, but I did want to do this. So let me make sure as I'm sharing, everyone can hear. If y'all can just give me a thumbs up if you can hear as I play this, that would be awesome to make sure we're all doing this correctly in this world. So.
Pattern that started to emerge as we started plotting these 5,700 listings on the map of Long Island, where our testers and tested agents.
Some of them are not as nice. Elmont, most of Hempstead, Roosevelt, Baldwin, Freeport.
Interestingly, there were areas on the map where agents weren't sending listings to our testers.
For buyers of all backgrounds, the agents from Long Island's 12 largest brands almost entirely avoided suggesting houses in predominantly minority communities.
It's what we came to call the big steer because the pattern was so prevalent, it involved all of our testers, Black, white, Hispanic, and Asian.
And do you really want your future children going to Alameda School District? And I'm not going to send you anything more there unless you don't want to store your card to buy your crap.
RE/MAX agent Joy Tuckson did not respond to requests for comment. RE/MAX LLC said in a statement, "We have spoken with the franchise owners whose agents were included in the inquiry and are confident they have taken this matter seriously and are committed to following the law and promoting levels of honesty, inclusivity, and professionalism in real estate." Hubbard said that he based his statements about communities on a website that purports to ascribe livability indexes, including crime statistics. Newsday discovered that the data behind the crime indexes was flawed.
So these areas that we identified were unique because they showed up on the map as not having many dots in these geographic areas. But that doesn't mean there weren't listings available in those neighborhoods. There certainly were on the days that we sent testers in, and there were multiple opportunities for agents to provide homes in these areas that they didn't take advantage of.
When you read the paper and you see that the values of houses are going up 6% on the island, you know, they're having a problem having enough houses to sell, that houses are lasting like a couple of months. And yet I have houses on this block that are taking 2-3 years to sell. There's something to it.
I've been practicing here for 18 years, and I've never had the experience of seeing an agent from the North Shore or the South Shore bring in a Caucasian looking for a home in the Hempstead area.
Many will not really consider Brentwood or Central Islip. There is somewhat of a bit of steering, and it's against the law, but it does happen. It's just real.
Something else we learned from public records, the 12 largest brands have no offices in Long Island's predominantly minority communities. A homeowner would have to travel somewhere else to meet with an agent at one of their offices.
All right, so there was a whole host of conversations that came out of the Long Island issue of how to fix things in real estate. And Michelle, I hope we have your connection better. Michelle, are you here now? As I said earlier, Michelle is the NAI Diversity Committee Chair and starting some of these conversations nationally around fair housing issues and other things nationally in the community. Michelle, can you hear us now?
I'm on my phone, so hopefully you guys can see me okay.
Perfect.
I apologize that we're just going to use the phone and the AirPods this morning. So
I get it. So Michelle, you're out of St. Louis, right?
I am. I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, and we're actually doing a diversity session with our Leadership Academy today. So that's why I'm sitting outside at a golf course in between sessions. So as Ryan mentioned, I chair the diversity committee for the National Association of Realtors. And when the Long Island report came out, I would say most of us were shocked by it, but at the same time, when we watched it, we weren't shocked. We saw and witnessed conversations that, you know, many of us have even had some of these conversations because we're not sure how to tell people different things about neighborhoods and things like that. So it was really a troubling expose. And very quickly, the National Association of Realtors came out with ACT, which is the acronym, because, you know, we do a lot of acronyms. So ACT is accountability, culture change, and training. And I think it was Jeffrey in a session I was on with him last week called us the alphabet mafia. That was the first time I had actually heard us called that. My husband often will say, "Are you going to hang out with the letter people?" You guys remember the letter people show on PBS when we were kids. So accountability, culture change, and training. So some of the things that have come out of that are, there's an implicit bias training video that is, you know, really well done and helps us to see the things that we may not actually see within ourselves. That's the thing about implicit bias, is it's unconscious. So we can think we are not racist, we are anti-racist. However, we still have prejudices and we still have those implicit biases, and we always will. So it's a matter of recognizing them. So that was kind of the first step, was an implicit bias video that they put out. The next thing they did was put together Fairhaven.Realtor, which is a fair housing simulator. And if you have not already done that, I would highly recommend it. I think it's one of the most well put together training exercises that I've seen in a long time. It allows you the opportunity to not only be the agent, but also be the buyer or seller that's experiencing discrimination. So those are some of the big initiatives and things that have happened. And we're currently working on a diversity strategic plan. And now they're going to start cutting grass behind me. I so apologize.
No, that's all right. Great. You know, and, you know, I want to talk about some of the issues at the broader level, right? The biggest thing I think that we all kind of feel a little uncomfortable how to handle at this point, right? And I want to dive deeper into it, as love letters, right? Like, because I mean, it wasn't long ago where, you know, you guys that are the practitioners in the field were saying how successful they were and how great they are at getting the house and all of this, right? And I just want to throw out to people how they can be problematic, even the ones you think that are helpful, right? So I'll be very clear with a scenario that was posed to me on the Cape. So it brings it home a little bit, right? So, you know, we really strong love letters from the buyer side is the buyer may be exposing things that may create discrimination around things in the protected class that put the seller in a bad position, because they may make decisions off things that violate fair housing rules and, you know, laws. And so I want to be very clear, like, so last summer, you know, as this real estate market is exploding, and we're talking about all the different kinds of buyers coming to the Cape and all this, the new kind of buyers coming that have children and all this stuff. And we're trying to figure out whether it's going to explode student populations and all this stuff. I had a real estate agent, a realtor member of ours, reach out to me and, "Ryan, I really hope they don't bring kids to the Cape." And I'm like, "Why?" And they're like, "Because I don't want to have to pay for all these kids to go to school." And, you know, I thought to myself, I was like, you know what, right there, most people are writing love letters. And I will say this, to say how they want to raise their family in the house, how they want to make it their year-round home, how they want to do this, and think that's valuable. Well, if you got that listing agent, is the listing agent, or we all know the citizens in these towns that get up at town meeting and talk about how they don't want to pay for any more schools, read that love letter, you're not getting that house, right? Because they already have a bias against wanting kids. So you think what you're doing is helping your client. In reality, it's actually hurting your client. And so I just want to show how, like, something as simple as that, as you think helping them, can hurt them. And I think as a real estate professional, as representing the buyer or seller, your job, one, is to help the seller not break law, right? Which is making decisions based on protected classes, but two is help them get the houses, right? I mean, Michelle, you can talk about in New York and California, we're seeing blocking out of any information around who the buyer is buying these houses at this point, because there's so many people concerned about this, right?
Absolutely. And definitely in California and New York, they don't even give the seller the buyer's name. They give the agent's name, and they leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, I was called a couple weeks ago by an agent in our market who was taken back because the listing agent of a house was asking for photos of the buyer with their offers. You know, and so, I mean, it happened to be like a person of color that was the prospective buyer. And I mean, that person didn't even want to deal with that house, right? You know, because like me, and I think this gets into this implicit bias and kind of the privilege argument that people don't want to have, but I would not think twice about including my photo with an offer or a photo of my family with an offer, because I don't think that, and I've never experienced like kind of discrimination around my ethnicity or race or gender or anything of that nature. And I'm interested in anyone else's perspective on that. I would never have thought twice about it, but obviously you see the issues with that. But I would have submitted it, and I would have had, you know, an advantage because I would have gone forward without having to worry about that.
So I can tell you that Sunny and I probably would not have that same privilege and would have to think twice before we submitted a photo of our families to a seller. We both have biracial families, just adding that in. And go ahead, Sunny.
I was just going to say, I think about this all the time, and I have conversations with people in my office all the time, because we're always talking, how are you guys dealing with this market? You know, what's coming up for you? And as I think many of us we're against love letters, but we want our clients to win houses. And I think about it, and as I talk to people, I'm like trying to inch my way into them deciding not to use them. And a conversation I had the other day with somebody, I got them to at least agree to advise, you know, their sellers when they're taking on a new listing, to have that conversation. And I think, Ryan, there's discussion about putting love letters into our listing agreements, having that be a discussion at the time of listing, so we can make them aware of how it puts them in a position, opening them up to, you know, potential fair housing complaints, and that none of those things really matter when they're selling their house. I understand there's emotion behind selling your home, and, you know, maybe you've owned the house for a long time, it's in the family, but at the end of the day, you know, those numbers are what it comes down to. So having that conversation with them at that point in time, so that when a listing comes on the market, you know, as the listing agent, we're saying, don't even bother submitting love letters. The seller, it's up to them. The seller has decided they're not going to look at them. You know, the issue's gone then. You know, I think a lot of it comes down to us as listing agents to have that conversation. Of course, on the buy side, we need to have this conversation as well. And it does. I think it can, you know, even not, you know, color. I think, you know, a gay couple, you know, somebody might not like that picture. So that might rub someone the wrong way. And there's ways that we can put ourselves out there, not realizing, you know, we're hurting our clients. So I think it's something we all need to really talk more about and really like stand up on. You know, it doesn't have to continue this way.
And I also just wanted to quickly throw in that this is an issue regarding listening devices and cameras as well. We know that on the form, people have to disclose whether there's a camera in the house or a listening device. Part of the reason is to protect people from fair housing issues. So if they go into a property, we have to disclose that there is camera and listening devices, whether someone else on the other end is listening or not. It can be a factor if a gay couple walks in to the house and the sellers don't care for that. This creates a fair housing problem, and that is part and parcel of the reason that it's included on the listing form for disclosure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Some of the conversation around that is can you know, even love letters can be done appropriately, right? Like they can be done where you're not disclosing any characteristics of a protected class around the buyer. But like I said, be careful what you're including, that you're not going to do something that ends up not getting you the house. But in this competitive market, it's kind of hard not to, right? Like it's kind of hard. It is a tough market for you guys to be in. And I just want to say that, right? Like that and Michelle, we're seeing all over the country. I mean, I think you're in that same I mean, even St. Louis, like, you're in a tough market like that right now. You're seeing it all over the country. You should talk to everyone.
Absolutely. The market is very similar nationwide. Lots and lots of buyers and very few homes for sale. Jeffrey, we had an issue within my office where one of my agents was showing a property to a buyer, and the buyer had on a pride shirt. And there were cameras. Missouri is actually a one-party state, so you don't have to notify the other party that they're being recorded. They submitted an offer, and the listing agent called my agent and said, hey, my seller's really religious and just kind of curious. What's the deal with this buyer? And so, you know, those cameras, you know, I always caution people, you're probably being recorded. So keep that in mind. Missouri just had a business conference, Missouri Realtors, and one of the topics that we focused heavily on was love letters. Since then, in the last week and a half, they've changed and updated the listing contract so that now love letters is a checkbox, yes or no. Either the seller will or will not. I'm a little concerned with that because I don't know that we have agents that are truly trained on how to have a conversation about implicit bias with their clients. But now that it's on the listing contract, we've got to make sure that agents are trained and prepared to have that conversation about implicit bias with every single one of their sellers. So I think that, you know, now we've got it on the contract, but we're going to have to really make sure that people are capable and prepared to have the conversations that that's going to lead to.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points.
Can I just raise a point about that? I think a lot of, you know, implicit bias also has a lot to do with people's misinterpretation of the difference between equity and equality. You know, and how equity means fairness, equality means sameness. So you can treat everybody the same, but in order to do that, you have to have fair practices, which means that you might have to treat them differently in order to get to equality. And the way to measure that is through an accountability system. So I just want to throw that out there because I think it's important that people understand the difference between fairness and sameness, equity and equality.
All right, great. Thank you. And so, you know, as we wrap up, you know, this conversation, Sonny, Jeff, is there anything that we've talked about the last couple of weeks? We've done some other sessions with Leadership Academy and some other things, and y'all have had a lot of great conversations. Talk to us real quick about what, you know, Michelle talked about what the National Association of Realtors Diversity Committee is doing. And you talk about where else you guys are looking at and going at, not only at the local level, but you also serve at the state level. Both of y'all on the state diversity, equity, inclusion task force as well. Yeah. So can you guys talk about what you're seeing at the state and the local level and where the path forward on some of these issues are?
Sure. On the state level, the State Diversity and Inclusion Committee is really developed to support the local realtor associations in their efforts for diversity and inclusion. So the state has developed grants for events and that kind of stuff to help us on the local level have our association start to confront these issues. And I just have to add that my participation on the state level has been very eye-opening because the Cape is so far ahead of some of the other associations in this effort that it's really a tribute to Ryan and Marissa and Whitney for all that they have done ahead of us forming this committee and moving forward. And it's fun for me on the state level to talk about what we're doing on the local level and see the eyes of the other local members and state members to open up wide, like, wow, you guys are really, you know, moved forward in this effort. And I think it's encouraging that they're kind of picking up on this idea of uncomfortable conversations. We brought it up at the meeting, and it is being adopted by the state association as a good thing to do amongst associations, and people had not really thought about it. So that's what I would say. Sonny?
And then a large state push, and Sonny may talk about this real quick, sorry, our large state association push is now to incorporate mandatory fair housing training into one of the 12 CE hours you have to get at the state level through real estate licensing every year.
Yes, absolutely. I think it would be wonderful. I think we need to Michelle's point, you know, we're changing policies and doing things, but when we do that, we have to learn how to handle those conversations, and that's where the training comes in. What Ryan is talking about, requiring all of us to get the training that's necessary. And I love what Jeff said. I totally agree. Cape and Islands Association has done a great job. Whitney worked with a local educator to create Protecting the Protected classes. And the first run of that class, I think it was last month, was wonderful. That is huge for somebody from our association, to take a leap and see, you know what, we're missing a piece of education here. You know, learning about implicit bias, and that's a lot of what this class is about, learning the different protected classes and how that might come up in the real estate transaction. That class opened my eyes to a lot of things. The conversation afterwards is part of what spurred our decision to start this uncomfortable conversation discussion. So that class is tomorrow. It might already be full because I know it filled up last time, but if you haven't signed up already, that would be the first thing I would suggest you do after you leave this Zoom, is sign up for that class. I think it's a great first step. A couple other things on the local level, you know, we really, the Massachusetts Association, they really are pushing community conversations and community partnerships. And you know, you guys see Tara here from Amplify POC. We really want to connect a lot with the Housing Assistance Corporation on these issues. I think they have some great initiatives. So we want to have some community events to raise more discussions and educate ourselves and community members. One thing that we've discussed, which it's not confirmed yet, so I probably shouldn't bring it up, but I'm gonna, because I just want to shout this book out anyway. If you guys have not read The Color of Law yet, Richard Rothstein, we're aware he has a house in Wellfleet. If anybody has any connections, hook us up.
Cool.
We really want him to come and talk to us. So this book is really eye-opening. It's all about the history of housing discrimination in this country and how the government policies intentionally created, you know, still segregated communities that we're in today, and how those policies and lending policies are still affecting us today. So keep an eye out for that. And
yeah, on that note, real quick, I mean, and I think some of our contemporaries around the country are still reckoning with that issue, because I talked to my counterparts who have these things called, if you've done real estate off Cape, and Michelle probably will laugh when I say these, MLS areas, lines on the map drawn or that don't have jurisdictional boundaries, but in the MLS. If you actually look at a lot of those in other parts of the country that have these, a lot of them actually are very similar to the lines of redlining. And so essentially you still have people in our industry not knowingly promoting the same lines that were used in redlining as well.
Absolutely. St. Louis County actually has, so St. Louis County has 91 municipalities within St. Louis County. And the reason is because of segregation. So, you know, and we still have those 91 municipalities. And, you know, there's a lot of issues with that. Policing is one of them. You know, you've got 90, well, not 90 anymore, but a lot of them have started to join forces. But, you know, it's all these 90 little fiefdoms within one county. And, you know, it's just a fascinating, it's fascinating, and it's actually sickening. When you read The Color of Law, it's sort of hard to get through. So I'll just caution you as you're reading it, just be prepared for that, because it's really disheartening to learn that our government actually did these things on purpose. It wasn't accidental. Segregation wasn't just something they did in the South. It was in every legal policy that our nation wrote. So The Color of Law, I highly, highly recommend it. We're going to have Richard Rothstein in St. Louis in September. If you've not heard him, just look him up. He has lots and lots of amazing little videos and things like that. And I highly, highly recommend. That's a great place to start, is with that book, The Color of Law.
I just want to add on, Ryan, real quick, to put this out there, locally, we have this committee together, but I just, the association is really prioritizing developing more diverse leadership, more diverse membership body, not just because, for numbers or because we're supposed to, because we genuinely want the voices and the people at the table from our membership. So if anybody's on the call that is interested in getting involved or knows someone who you think would be a wonderful person to get involved in leadership positions, please reach out to us. And if you have ideas for conversations, these difficult, uncomfortable conversations, please reach out. Jeff and I are just totally open and excited to hear from anybody who's interested and wants to talk.
Thanks, David Shortsleeve, for the comment in the chat. Yeah, absolutely. We've seen it hurt buyers, absolutely, on the love letter side. And Laurie asked a great question, and I wanted to get back to this because y'all mentioned it. She asked about, is there a discussion about not allowing videos to view and listen to buyers viewing the house? It absolutely is areas for potential discrimination. The issue is that, that's all covered under state law, but I want to be very clear. State law in Massachusetts is a two-party consent state. So one is you won't actually see videos like Long Island's. And if you watch that whole series, you'll see the agents. I mean, one agent in front of the New York State Senate literally said that, he didn't see a problem with saying, well, Hispanics have taken over that area, and referring to not wanting to look at houses in that area. But what you won't get in Massachusetts, because we're a two-party consent state, is the videos that you saw in Long Island, right? So the testers in Long Island were able to actually display the videos because New York is a one-party consent state. So that actually has hurt the idea of being able to test and to make it public around the fair housing issues in every state from the ones that are two-party consents. But if a seller is recording video in a house that people are coming in, there needs to be disclosure before you start recording that video, which means if the Ring doorbell is recording videos, then you need to be posting sign at the curb saying that people are being recorded before they walk in. And it's not just buyers, it's home inspectors, it's appraisers, it's anyone that technically walks on the property. If they're being video recorded, that is what two-party consent means, that they have notice, and that before they even start getting videoed on the property, that they can stop being videoed. And then that is why we've added it to disclosure in the MLS as one step, but disclosure in the MLS doesn't give, like if I was actually video recording everyone in my house and in Massachusetts and I had a dinner party, I have to tell everyone at the dinner party before they come over that we're video recording things, right? Like that there's video recording. So I just want to be very clear about that video recording law, because I think that is being glossed over as a two-party consent in the age of smart home technology.
You're right. So we actually have a statement in our listing contract and in our buyer's agency agreements here in Missouri that let people know that there is a strong possibility, letting the sellers know that there may be issues if they are recording, that they, I mean, if you've got your whole house recorded and somebody's child goes to the bathroom and leaves the door open, I mean, you as a seller could potentially have a pretty major issue with that. Likewise, on the buyer side, on the buyer's agency agreement, we let everybody know that there is a potential that you may be recorded in these properties. So to use caution. I don't know if you guys have that in your contracts or not.
They're recording, and the question came out of the recording anyways. I mean, if they want to do something about it, talk to their attorney, see what there is to do, right? I mean, it is a legal issue if they're recording and not consenting to it and not disclosing it in that vein. So, we can have more conversations around that. Another thing we're going to be having coming up is conversation around later on in the spring, emotional support animals, as we're hearing a lot of that, and the issues around fair housing and that, and what they are versus service animals, and all of those issues. Because this is not, the issues of fair housing is not about just race. It's gender, it's LGBTQ issues, it's emotional support. It's service animals. It's I mean, in Massachusetts, what we saw with the Suffolk law thing is Section 8 vouchers and rentals being a big discrimination factor, things of that nature. So there's a whole host of issues here that I think as an industry we have not talked enough openly about. And I think that's kind of maybe that's the best way to sum up the conversation happening around the country, and that Jeff and Sonny are leading here, is to try to open that conversation up to in a judgment-free zone where we can have these issues. Sonny, Jeff, anything to end with on that?
No, as Sonny said, we're very open. We're pretty easy to find, you know, realtors, we're everywhere. But please reach out if you're interested in being part of the effort or know somebody else that is, that's great. Also, we want to encourage a more diverse realtor population, and so that's part of it too. We don't have a lot of people of color that are out as agents in our association, and we want to encourage it because that will encourage the buyers, etc. So we're here. Write us. And participate with us if you want.
All right. Thank you guys so much. We're looking for topics for our May Zoomed In. So if you have one, send it my way. We'd love to see what you guys want to hear more about as we move forward with these. Thank you guys very much and have a great day.